The rain had just stopped when Jake Morrison noticed them. He was walking his 7-year-old son, Tyler, home from school, taking their usual route past the shops on Madison Street, when he saw 2 little girls standing near the bookstore window. They couldn't have been more than 4 years old. Identical twins, with blonde curls pulled into pigtails, wearing matching red dresses. They were staring at something in the window with the kind of intense focus that only young children possess. What caught Jake's attention wasn't just how adorable they were, but the fact that they seemed to be alone. He slowed his pace, watching as pedestrians hurried past them without a glance. A woman with shopping bags nearly bumped into one of the twins, muttering an irritated "excuse me" without even looking down. Jake stopped walking, his protective instincts as a father immediately engaged. Tyler tugged on his hand, ready to keep going. But Jake held firm. "Hold on a second, buddy," he said quietly. He watched as one of the twins turned to the other and began moving her hands rapidly in deliberate patterns. The other twin responded in kind, her small hands forming shapes and gestures that Jake immediately recognized. American Sign Language. The girls were deaf. His heart clenched. These 2 little girls were alone on a busy street, unable to hear approaching cars or call out for help if they needed it, and everyone was simply walking past them as if they were invisible. Jake had learned ASL years ago when he'd worked as a counselor at a summer camp that included deaf and hard-of-hearing children. It had been one of the most rewarding experiences of his life, and though he was rusty now, the language came back to him like muscle memory. He knelt down on the still wet sidewalk, bringing himself to the twins' eye level, and caught their attention with a gentle wave. 2 pairs of identical blue eyes turned toward him, curious and slightly wary. Jake lifted his hands and signed, "Hello, my name is Jake. What are your names?" The effect was instantaneous. Both little girls' faces lit up with surprise and delight. One of them signed back eagerly, "I'm Lily. This is my sister Rose. You can sign?" "Yes, I can sign," Jake responded, his hands moving through the familiar patterns. "Are you lost? Where is your mommy or daddy?" The twins looked at each other, and he saw fear flicker across their faces. Rose signed, "We were with mommy. She was shopping. We saw the pretty books and stopped. When we looked up, she was gone." Jake felt a surge of concern. How long had these girls been standing here? How far could their mother have gotten? "It's okay," he signed reassuringly. "We're going to find your mommy. Don't worry." Tyler had been watching this entire exchange with wide eyes. "Dad, what are you doing?" he asked. "These little girls are deaf, Tyler. That means they can't hear like you and me. I'm using sign language to talk to them. They got separated from their mom, and we're going to help them find her." Tyler's expression became serious, the way it always did when he understood something was important. "Okay, what can I do?" Jake smiled at his son, proud of his willingness to help. He turned back to the twins and signed, "This is my son, Tyler. We're going to help you. Can you tell me what your mommy looks like?" Lily signed. "She has yellow hair like us, but longer. She was wearing a white jacket and carrying bags." "Do you know your mommy's phone number?" Jake signed. Both girls shook their heads. There were only 4, after all, too young to memorize phone numbers. Jake pulled out his phone and quickly typed a message to the local police non-emergency line explaining the situation. Then he signed to the girls, "We're going to wait right here for a few minutes. Your mommy is probably looking for you, and she'll come back to where she last saw you. Is this where you were when you lost her?" Rose nodded vigorously, pointing at the bookstore window. Inside, there was a display of children's books with colorful covers featuring princesses and castles. While they waited, Jake kept the girls calm by teaching Tyler some basic signs. "This is how you say hello," Jake explained, demonstrating the gesture. "And this is friend." Tyler practiced carefully, then signed to the twins. His movements slow and deliberate. "Hello, friends." Both Lily and Rose giggled, clapping their hands in delight. They began teaching Tyler more signs, colors, animals. Thank you. Despite the scary situation of being separated from their mother, the girls were animated and joyful, thrilled to have found someone who could communicate with them. Jake watched the interaction with a lump in his throat. He thought about how isolating it must be for these girls, living in a world where most people couldn't speak their language. How often were they ignored or overlooked simply because communication required more effort? 10 minutes passed, then 15. Jake was starting to worry when he saw a woman running down the street. Her blonde hair flying behind her, white jacket unbuttoned and shopping bags abandoned. Her face was streaked with tears, her expression panicked. Lily rose. She was shouting, even though her daughters couldn't hear her. The twins saw her at the same moment, and their faces transformed with relief and joy. Mommy, they signed, running toward her. The woman dropped to her knees on the wet sidewalk, gathering both girls into her arms, sobbing as she held them. Jake stood back, giving them space for their reunion, his hand on Tyler's shoulder. After a long moment, the woman looked up at Jake, her eyes red from crying. Thank you, she said, her voice shaking. Thank you so much for staying with them. I only turned away for a moment to pay for something, and when I looked back, they were gone. I've been searching everywhere. They're okay, Jake assured her. They were very brave. The woman stood, still holding both daughters' hands tightly. She looked at Jake more carefully now, and he saw recognition dawn on her face. She signed to her daughters. Did this man sign with you? Both girls nodded enthusiastically. Lily signed. He said hello. Nobody else could talk to us. Everyone just walked by, but he stopped and signed hello. The woman's eyes filled with tears again. She signed to her daughters. Go wait, right there by the window. Don't move. Mommy needs to talk to this kind man for just 1 minute. The twins obediently moved to stand by the bookstore window, staying within their mother's line of sight. The woman turned to Jake, and now he could see she was signing as she spoke. A habit many parents of deaf children developed. I'm Victoria Harlow. Those are my daughters, Lily and Rose. What you did, stopping to help them, signing with them, you have no idea what that means. Most people, they see my girls and they look away. They don't want to deal with the complexity of communication. They pretend not to notice when my children are trying to get their attention or ask for help. I'm Jake Morrison, he replied, also signing as he spoke. And this is my son, Tyler. I learned ASL years ago when I worked at a camp. I couldn't just walk past 2 little girls who needed help. Victoria shook her head, wiping her eyes. But you didn't just not walk past. You stopped. You communicated with them in their language. Do you know how rare that is? My daughters are 4 years old, and you're maybe the 5th or 6th hearing stranger who's ever signed with them. Most people just point or gesture or give up entirely. Said felt a heaviness in his chest at her words. That must be incredibly isolating for them. For all of you, Sis Victoria admitted. Every day is a battle to make sure my girls feel included, valued, seen. I do everything I can, but I can't control how the world treats them. And the world often acts like they're invisible. She paused, seeming to make a decision. Can I buy you coffee? I know you're probably heading somewhere, but I'd like to thank you properly. And honestly, my girls are already attached to you. Look at them. Jake glanced over and saw that both twins were watching him hopefully, signing please over and over. He looked down at Tyler, who nodded enthusiastically. Can we, Dad? I want to learn more signs. They ended up at a small cafe around the corner. Victoria ordered hot chocolate for all the children and coffee for herself and Jake, while the kids sat at a nearby table, practicing signs and drawing on napkins. The adults talked. Victoria told him about her daughter's diagnosis at 18 months, about her divorce shortly after when her husband couldn't handle the challenges of raising deaf children, about building a new life as a single mother in a world that wasn't designed for her daughter's needs. Okay, the hardest part isn't the deafness itself, she said quietly. It's the isolation, the loneliness of being different in a world that values conformity. I'm teaching them to be proud of who they are, to see their deafness as a part of their identity rather than a limitation. But it's hard when so much of the world treats them like they're defective or burdensome. Jake listened, thinking about his own challenges as a single father. His wife had died when Tyler was just 2, a sudden illness that had turned their world upside down. He'd struggled with loneliness and fear, worried about raising his son alone. But at least his challenges were invisible. Tyler could walk through the world without people immediately identifying him as different. I can't imagine how difficult that must be, Jake said honestly. But for what it's worth, your daughters seem happy and confident. You're clearly doing an amazing job. Victoria smiled, but there was sadness in it. I try, but I worry about their future, about them going to school and making friends, about them navigating a world where so few people can communicate with them. I worry about them being lonely, asterisk, over the next hour. As the children played and laughed together, Jake and Victoria discovered they had more in common than just single parenthood. They lived only a few blocks from each other. Their children would be attending the same elementary school in a year. They both loved hiking and old movies and terrible puns. When it was time to leave, Tyler hugged both twins goodbye, signing, "See you later," with careful precision. The girls signed back, giggling. Would it be okay if we stayed in touch? Victoria asked, pulling out her phone. The girls would love to see Tyler again, and honestly, I could use an adult friend who understands ASL. Most of my social circle is limited to other parents of deaf children and sign language interpreters. I'd like that, Jake said, meaning it. He gave her his number, and they made tentative plans to meet at the park that weekend. As he and Tyler walked home, his son was quiet for a while before asking, "Dad, why didn't anyone else stop to help those girls?" Jake thought carefully about how to answer. I think sometimes people don't know how to help, so they convince themselves that someone else will handle it. Or they're too busy with their own lives to notice when someone needs them. Or they see something difficult, and they choose the easy path of looking away. But you stopped, Tyler said. Double quotes. Yes, I did. Because you knew how to sign. Partly, Jake admitted. But also because there were 2 little girls who needed help, and I'm a dad. I couldn't walk past them any more than I could walk past you if you needed help. Tyler was quiet again, processing this. Then he said, I want to learn more sign language, so if I see someone who needs help and they're deaf, I can talk to them too. Jake felt a surge of pride in his son. I think that's a wonderful idea, buddy. We'll practice together. That weekend, they met Victoria and the twins at the park. What started as one play date became 2, then 3, then a regular weekly occurrence. Tyler and the twins became inseparable, with Tyler proudly serving as their interpreter on the playground, teaching other children basic signs so everyone could communicate. Jake and Victoria's friendship deepened into something more. They understood each other's challenges, supported each other's struggles, and found joy in building something new from the pieces of their broken pasts. 6 months after that rainy day on Madison Street, Victoria brought up something that had been on her mind. I've been thinking about starting an advocacy group, she said as they watched the children play, for families with deaf children and for deaf individuals, a place where people can learn ASL, where deaf kids can socialize with each other and with hearing peers who are learning to sign. A community center, essentially. That sounds incredible, Jake said. What would you need to make it happen? Victoria pulled out a notebook filled with plans and budgets. Funding, mostly. And space. And volunteers who know ASL. It's a big dream. Probably too big. Dreams are supposed to be big, Jake said. He'd been thinking about this for weeks, actually. ever since Victoria had casually mentioned how few resources existed for families like hers. What if I told you I have some space? My family owns a building downtown that's been sitting empty for 2 years. We could convert it. And I have some savings. Not a fortune, but enough to get started. Victoria stared at him. Jake, I couldn't ask you to do that if you're not asking. I'm offering. Victoria, that day on the street, when I saw your daughters being ignored by everyone, it broke something open in me. It made me realize how much of my life I'd been spending just focused on getting by, on surviving, on my own little bubble. Your girls reminded me that there's a bigger world out there, full of people who need help, who need to be seen. Let me help. Let me be part of building something that matters. They spent the next year transforming Jake's empty building into the Madison Street Community Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. It had classrooms for ASL instruction, a library of resources, a playroom where deaf and hearing children could interact, counseling services for families navigating the challenges of deafness, and a community space for social events. The grand opening was attended by over 200 people, including many from the deaf community who were thrilled to have a dedicated space in the city. Lily and Rose, now 5 years old, helped cut the ribbon, their small hands gripping the scissors together, while Jake and Victoria steadied them in his opening remarks. Jake told the story of that rainy day, of seeing 2 little girls who were being ignored, of the simple decision to stop and sign, "Hello." "I learned something that day," he said, signing as he spoke so everyone could understand. "I learned that the most profound connections often start with the smallest gestures. A simple hello in someone's language. A moment of stopping instead of walking past. An acknowledgement that someone is there, that they matter, that they deserve to be seen and heard, even if hearing means something different for them." He looked at Victoria, standing beside him with her daughters. "This center exists because 2 little girls taught me to pay attention, to not look away, to see people who are often overlooked. It exists because their mother showed me what real strength looks like, what it means to advocate for your children and build a community when the world tells you you're alone." Victoria took the microphone, her signs emphatic and passionate. For too long, deaf individuals have been treated as disabled, as less than, as burdens on a hearing world. But we are not disabled. We are differently abled. We have our own language, our own culture, our own strengths. This center is a place where deaf and hearing people can come together, where communication flows in multiple directions, where deafness is celebrated rather than pitied. The center thrived. Within a year, they had over 50 families enrolled in programs, dozens of volunteers teaching ASL classes, and a vibrant community of deaf and hearing individuals building friendships and understanding. Tyler, now 8, was fluent in ASL and had become one of the center's most enthusiastic ambassadors, often bringing his classmates to learn basic signs. Lily and Rose attended a mainstream school with interpreters, but spent their afternoons at the center, surrounded by both deaf peers and hearing friends who could communicate with them. Effortlessly, Jake and Victoria's relationship had grown from friendship to something deeper. They'd taken it slowly, mindful of their children and their complicated pasts, but love had found them anyway. When Jake proposed, he did it in sign language, in front of the twins and Tyler, asking Victoria to build a life with him. She signed yes through her tears, and the children cheered, signing love and family and happy, had their small wedding a year later. The ceremony was conducted in both English and ASL, with an interpreter ensuring that every word was accessible to everyone present. Lily and Rose served as flower girls, walking down the aisle in matching dresses, this time in white with red sashes. Tyler stood beside his father as best man, signing his prepared speech about how his dad had taught him that helping others wasn't just the right thing to do. It was the way you built a meaningful life. Years later, when the center had expanded to include vocational training programs and advocacy services, when they'd helped hundreds of families navigate the challenges of raising deaf children, when they'd trained thousands of people in ASL. Jake sometimes thought back to that rainy afternoon. He thought about how easy it would have been to keep walking, to assume someone else would help, to convince himself it wasn't his responsibility. He thought about how different his life would have been if he'd made that choice. No Victoria, no expanded family, no center, no community. Just the same narrow existence he'd been living, going through the motions, but not truly engaged with the world around him. One afternoon, as he watched Victoria lead a workshop for parents of newly diagnosed deaf children, as he saw the hope and relief on their faces when they realized they weren't alone, he felt a small hand slip into his. He looked down to see Rose, now 12, standing beside him. She sighed, "Thank you for seeing us that day. Thank you for not walking past." Jake knelt down, even though she was getting too big for it now, and sighed back, "Thank you for teaching me to see. Thank you for showing me what matters." 'Cause that's what it came down to, really. The world was full of people who needed to be seen, acknowledged, included. The world was full of invisible barriers that kept people isolated and alone. And the world was also full of opportunities to bridge those gaps, to reach across divides, to speak someone else's language, literally or figuratively. It started with something as simple as signing hello. But what it became was family, community, purpose, and love. All because one person chose to stop when others walked past, chose to engage when others looked away, chose to see two little girls in red dresses who were standing alone in a world that had gotten to notice them. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales of compassion, inclusion, and unexpected connections. Leave a comment below about a time when you stopped to help someone others were ignoring, or about someone who noticed you when you felt invisible. Share your thoughts on how we can build a more inclusive world where everyone, regardless of their abilities or differences, feels seen and valued. Remember, every act of acknowledgement matters. Every effort to communicate across barriers counts. Every moment of choosing to stop instead of walking past can change a life.